it's not. So we're just going to talk about it. And then the top 6 life-changing actions that I'd recommend. And hopefully, it's all familiar and you can share. If not, then we'll take away together. So that's our agenda. So we'll start with the wellness wheel. These are the 12 variables. I also went to Integrative Institute for Nutrition. So it's a New York-based university. It's something that I looked into because I'm in med school and I'm like, how am I going to infuse my understanding of my travels in America? They don't have this here. So I went to this university. These 12 variables are the things that actually project our wellness. These are the things that impact it directly. They ping off of each other. Spirituality, finance, physical activity, and relationships are the biggest things to me, and health, obviously. So those things are the biggest parts, because if you're not spiritual, how are you creative? How are your finances being done? And we talked about earlier how currency is something that you feel like there's a lack, right? And we all have that in our communities, in our families, across generations. And it comes from lack of knowledge of self. Because your currency comes from yourself. It comes from your environment, but you can generate it. You're a self-generating being. You're a cellular being, so you can create your own currency and carry it. But if you have applications running all day, if you have other people using you all day, then your battery dries. And you don't have that ability to self-absorb your own currency or circulate it the way you want to. So spirituality is a big deal. Creativity comes from spirituality. Who's creative without your higher self, or what are you actually drawing? It comes scribble scrabble versus art. There's spirituality in there. Finances come from your understanding of being and being understanding who you are. And your career comes from who you allow to take your energy, or if you're going to receive and give it to somebody. So I've had a 17-year career with a big telecom company. That's what I'm talking about, cellular. When you understand 5G, 4G, and you understand how that actually works, and you know the human body, they really do work together. So I worked for Verizon for 17 years. So career, and I jumped to this. So I was able to take my energy and say, okay, let me put it to something that's going to make sense. I did work with hospitals, but it wasn't the same as me actually helping people directly. So education, we all know about that. We put a lot of money into it. What do you actually get back from it? It only applies if you apply it, and that comes down to your spirituality and your life goals. And your physical activity, we'll talk about that a little bit later. Home cooking, a lot of people can't even do that anymore or never did, and that's a big deal. Home environment, your relationships, social life is different from relationships. Relationships are like partnerships and things that you do as beings. Two people come together and they say, okay, we're either forced to be together or we're going to volunteer to be together. But the social life part of it is a completely different thing. It's actually where you generate energy collectively. Like if you go out with your friends, most of the time, not all the time, right? But most of the time you come back refreshed and you had a good time. Or family, you know what I mean? So social life is actually different from relationships, but they do work together. And then there's joy. Without all this stuff, or without joy, you can't have any of this stuff. So the opposite of joy is probably sadness or depression, and that's kind of a lot of where we are right now as a culture in general. And it's just all about the environment that we allow to either drain us or give back to us. How we circulate.
Can I say something? Can I say something really quickly to that point? I do think that sadness is a choice. I was talking to Jamila about this recently, and happiness is also a choice. So it's easy to allow, like you say, the cellular, the distraction, the stuff that's coming in that's external to thwart our reality, and all of a sudden, based on what you're getting from the outside, is subconsciously reprogramming you to think that, create this illusion that you should feel that sad emotion, when had you never even considered these external factors and you were just vibrating just alone within yourself, like as you're saying. I love this whole cellular thing because I hadn't thought of it like this before, but I think maybe that I don't know, just what are your thoughts on that?
No, I completely agree with what you're saying. You guys can still hear me, right?
Yeah.
Okay, just making sure. But definitely, I agree with what you're saying, because energy is contagious. We're going to talk about that too. That kind of comes up. I mean, I'm really covering this in full scale in terms of how we end up where we are. In a way, this is the foundation of how to uplift it. So these are true gems, and I know we all have these experiences, but the way that this collectively puts it together gives you more incentive and more motivation, and then just the formula. Like, how do you figure out an answer if you don't have a formula? You know, we haven't really been able to do that. So this is kind of the formula of that. And I agree with you completely. Like, energy is, you know, transmitted all the time, and we're going to talk about that. But absolutely, I do agree that we impact each other. And a good example of that is the media. In the conscious community, it's even called a demigod. You know, the media is its own god because people worship it. They sit there in front of it more than they even pray or whatever they were, you know, taught to do and what their path is for spiritual growth. And they become religious through media, and then that impacts their well-being. I don't know if you guys watch Queen Sugar or American Gods or anything like that, but right now on Queen Sugar, you know, they're talking about COVID and how the elderly are sitting there watching the news. So it's just depending on how it is, but I agree. You know, anything about the wheel we want to talk about, or any questions?
I think. Can you hear me?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. No, I think this is awesome.
Yeah.
And it's actually putting things in perspective for me because, like, I'm like, oh, with COVID, I'll let some of these balls drop. So I'm realizing, like, oh, okay, in order for me to be balanced, and I remember reading this book by Lisa Nicole. She's big about, living your life abundantly. But it's not just about like money or anything, but she's saying like in order to have abundance in your life, you have to be appreciative of everything that you have, but then also making sure that there's balance everywhere else. Because if you're not, like if you have 90% in one area and then only 10% in another area, then you're not really, living at your fullest potential. So like seeing this wheel is like, girl, you have some work to do. So thank you for that.
Definitely. Thanks for sharing. And then one of the